Everybody, I'm Tony Choules. I'm one of the advisors to the UKFPO. I have with me Doanna and Fiona, who are going to be helping me out this afternoon. We're going to talk a little bit about supporting foundation doctors, ensuring their well-being. So the objectives for the session are to deliver an update for supervisors, both on sort of pastoral and a little bit on developmental care. We're going to cover topics including equal opportunities, the real importance of getting foundation doctors immersed in the system in which they're going to work. I will mention the buddying and system, which I know a number of trusts are now using. And then Fiona's going to talk a little about the working environment and developing the sort of learning environment from it. And Doanna's going to present some information that the Foundation Fellows have been working on this year, particularly around allowing access to non-inpatient clinical activities. I'm aware that when foundation doctors are out in general practice and so on, they get a lot of that. But within the hospital, a lot of time is spent on the ward. And this is about trying to get opportunities to go to outpatient clinics, MDT, theatres, that kind of thing. And Doanna will say a little bit more about that later. And we're also going to talk a little bit about core teaching, in that we're going to provide some feedback from foundation doctors across the country or across the 4 nations, to a little bit about their experience with core teaching, what they feel works well, and perhaps give you a few ideas. Please feel free to use the QA function. It is quite a packed program, but we're hoping to have some time at the end for question and answer sessions. So please use the QA function. I don't need to tell you this. Foundation program is the bridge between undergraduate training, postgraduate training, but it is part of the curriculum or the continuum of medical education. And it's a really major point in the life of foundation doctors, moving from being students to taking professional responsibility. It's a big step, and not surprisingly, a lot of foundation doctors feel very daunted. And hopefully some of the things we say this afternoon will help to ease that transition. I couldn't let the webinar go by without mentioning the curriculum. And the curriculum does emphasise that foundation doctors are inexperienced and need a lot of support. The GMC is very keen at the moment that we ensure that all doctors are supported according to their needs. And some doctors will need more support than others. I particularly cite here international medical graduates who come in very new to the UK system and have an awful lot to assimilate, both about UK culture as much as the medicine that's practiced here. And the other thing that I think is really important is that we treat everybody fairly. And with that in mind, I'm going to pass over to Doanna, who I say is one of our foundation fellows coming to the end of her year, who's going to tell us a little bit about differential attainment and how we deal with unconscious bias in ourselves to try and ensure that we reduce any sort of differential attainment.
Thank you, Tony. Again, my name is Doanna. I'm currently one of the UKFPO fellows, and I'm an F2 at Durham Hospital. And I'm here to present a portion of my project that I've been working on for the year, which is a workshop on unconscious bias. And it's titled Beyond the Blind Spot: Unraveling Unconscious Bias. This presentation is just a short form version of the actual presentation, but this will be available on the UKFPO website along with a facilitator guide for other trainees to be able to facilitate this in their own trusts and in their hospitals if anybody's interested. So to start this presentation off, if everybody could just, kind of close their eyes or envision this scenario. So the surgeon entered the room to greet the patient, explain the procedure, and obtain consent. They addressed the patient's questions and then continued the ward round. So after hearing that scenario, what gender did you think the surgeon was? So most people tend to assume surgeons are male due to deeply ingrained societal and cultural stereotypes. Historically, the medical profession, especially surgery, has been male-dominated. So media portrays often, reinforce this image, depicting surgeons and other high-status medical professionals as men. Additionally, traditional gender roles have long associated men with leadership and technical expertise, further perpetuating the bias. So this assumption persists despite increasing numbers of women entering and excelling in the field of surgery. So this is just one example of the biases that are present in medicine today. Next slide. So unconscious bias operates beneath the surface in healthcare, influencing our decisions and interactions in ways that we might not even be aware of. Our commitment to providing equitable and patient-centered care is paramount. Understanding and addressing unconscious bias is an integral step towards achieving this goal. Unconscious bias can have profound effects on patient outcomes, clinical decisions, colleague interactions, and the overall healthcare experience. And this kind of workshop and presentation isn't just about individual self-awareness, which is also great, but it's about fostering a culture of inclusivity and sensitivity within our healthcare institutions. Next slide. So what is a bias? So a bias refers to a predisposition, leaning, or prejudice inclination either in favor of or against something or someone. While some biases can be positive and constructive, such as opting for a diet of healthy foods or distancing oneself from someone with a history of harm, many biases stem from stereotypes rather than genuine understanding of an individual or situation. So regardless of being positive or negative, these cognitive shortcuts may lead to preconceived judgments, promptly hasty decisions, or discriminatory behaviors. Next slide. So what is unconscious bias? Unconscious bias is the immediate judgment of something or someone based on our past experiences, background, and culture. And it is an instinctive rather than a rational thought process and occurs almost instantaneously on encountering someone or something new or different. Next slide. So I've put in a very short video in this presentation, and it's a really good example of how unconscious bias doesn't always have to be loud and disrespectful and rude and obvious. So next slide, and we'll play that video.
You're about to meet Michael. He lives fast as a self-made millionaire.
You didn't have to dress up. It's all right.
You're going to photograph Michael. He's actually saved somebody's life. Michael is an ex-inmate. He's a commercial fisherman. Michael claims to be psychic.
Nice to meet you.
Michael's a former alcoholic. Here's your camera. I would like you to flesh out the essence of who he is.
What would you like out of this? What would you like the photograph to say about you?
Do you find that being a psychic impacts much on your day-to-day life?
I can see this is emotional for you.
Like to get to know the person.
You've only got 10 minutes, right?
I think you're a guy that's put yourself out there. You're not hiding anything. My plan was to find out about whoever it was and to try and get that. And what I learned from him is he's incredibly brave.
It was really intense. Pull this shirt out. Sorry.
I wanted to see the nature of the person, which can present a challenge. How do you portray him as a fisherman?
That's perfect.
He's a self-made millionaire and sort of a little bit intimidating. I wasn't going for a beautiful, nice, perfectly lit portrait.
I just want to try bring out something of who you are. I think that you just treat people like the everyday people, like everybody is.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope I've got that guy's bravery on film.
So it was a very intimidating environment.
I'll see your work.
I like the empty chair next to it too.
Because this is a totally different person.
Almost looks like 6 different people. So not everything I told you today was true. I'm not a fisherman. I am not an alcoholic. The GFC hit me hard, but I've never been a millionaire. Never been in prison. I am a Bondi lifesaver, but the story we talked about never did happen. Not psychic. Can barely spell it.
Before I knew there were different characters in each, I thought, that's really strange. These don't look like portraits of the character I thought you were. You always got your own preconceptions and you've got your ideas.
It pushed me into a position and a space that I wouldn't normally be in.
You have to dig a lot deeper. It means you've got to be, I think you're a lot more creative to work out how you're going to play things.
So I think this video is a prime example of how biases can appear seemingly harmless. So these photographers, all aiming to create the best possible image of their client, unintentionally let their biases influence the final photograph. So if you can kind of see the difference in the photographs and what they actually look like, and if you heard the commentary, some of them were saying that it looked like, completely different people. So despite capturing the same individual, the results and the images varied significantly, reflecting the photographer's underlying biases. So this demonstrates that not all biases manifest as overt acts of insensitivity. Even well-intentioned actions can be subtly shaped by personal biases. Next slide. So we're going to quickly go over 6 types of biases. There are many types of biases, but these 6, we can, kind of see them every day in, in medicine. And then we'll go through 2 quick scenarios highlighting 2 of these biases. Next slide. So we have 3 biases here: affinity bias, Horn's effect, and halo effect. So what is affinity bias? This is when we favor people who are like us or remind us of someone we know and like, or who we believe we will feel comfortable with, and it leads us to ignore negative traits. Horn's effect is a little bit of the opposite. It's a tendency to associate a negative aspect with a person, and this then leads us to assume other negatives about them. So it can prevent us from seeing the positive aspects of a person. And then the halo effect is when we perceive one good thing about a person and then believe that everything that they do is always good. And we associate success in one endeavor with an overall tendency for success in general. Next slide. So we have contrast effect, which is the enhancement or reduction of our perception of one person when comparing them with another who has preceded them. So this can mean a trainer rating a trainee in comparison with another trainee rather than against the criteria of the performance rating. Conformity effect is the tendency people have to behave like others around them rather than their personal judgment. So they are inclined to take cues or choices in behavior from actions of the others around them. And then lastly, we have confirmation bias, which is when we favor information which confirms previously existing beliefs or biases. And we have a natural tendency to look for characteristics and behaviors in people that confirm our preconceived behaviors about them in a way that we interpret or recall performance, positive or negative. Next slide. So we have a scenario here, and this is Ben, who is a trainee. So Ben was hoping to receive some good feedback from his work last week. He had received patients on time, despite there being lots of admissions from A&E. Ben has not been at the hospital long, and he had come with a poor report from his clinical supervisor at his previous post, who had claimed that he was lazy and unreliable. Although Chandra thought that Ben had worked well last week, she was reluctant to extend that to good feedback. Ben arrived late one day that week before Chandra wanted and Chandra didn't want to concentrate on this. So, hi, Ben, come in, take a seat. I just wanted to catch up with you. How are things? So Ben says, good. I feel that things are going well. We were very busy with patients coming in from A&E, but I managed to receive them all on time. And then Chandra says, yes. Now, can we talk about Tuesday? You arrived late. This seems to have been a problem at your previous placement too. We can't tolerate lateness here. You have to be more organized. And then Ben says, yes, but. So then you can now make it a priority to be here on the right time. And then Ben says, yes, of course. Great. That's all I wanted to say for now. So what type of bias is presented here? Next slide. So this is the Horn's effect. So how can this actually affect Ben as a trainee himself? So after the negative feedback from Chandra, Ben has been very withdrawn over the last couple of weeks and has been avoiding opportunities to learn in theater. His peers are concerned about him and also worry about having Chandra to assess them. So Ben is thinking to himself, I can't do anything right. Next slide. So we have Christina, who's working on a team, and they are looking for a member to join their organization of work to work on a QI project. So a few names have been suggested to Christina, and Christina believes that Ahmed, one of the trainees, would be a good addition to the team. So I was thinking Ahmed would be a good choice for us. I've worked with him before and found him to be very focused, responsible, and creative. He's an excellent, has excellent outcomes for QI projects in the past, and even has qualifications for QI methodology. And then one for other colleagues says, well, I'm not so sure. I've heard he can be difficult to work with. I don't really know much about him, but anyway, I was thinking about Simon. I agree. I think Simon would be very suitable. He's also hinted that he would like to be involved with this. Let's go with him, shall we? And then Christina says, okay, Simon it is. I'll let him know. Next slide. So what type of bias is this? This is considered conformity bias. So after Christina's team, kind of chose Simon over Ahmed and the QI project actually began to flounder. So Simon did not truly understand how to make the project a success, and it is now running behind in time. Meanwhile, Ahmed is wondering why they didn't ask him to do the job. So he's thinking to himself, I wonder why they didn't invite me into the team. They know I have the skills to do this. Christina especially knows how I was hoping to help with another QI project. I must have done something wrong. They obviously don't value what I have to offer. So these two scenarios are just quick examples of how biases can really cause a lot of internal dialogue with, a trainee or whoever you're dealing with. And it takes, a long time to get over these, simple biases. So whenever you're dealing with trainees or colleagues in general, just remember your biases. And in the next couple of slides, we're going to go over how to actually mitigate the impact of biases in the workplace. Next slide. So Making Diversity Work is actually a book by Dr. Sandra Thienemann, who has been drawn from 25 years of experience in the field of diversity. And she has kind of dissected the problems surrounding diversity in the workplace and offers specific, straightforward strategies focused on creating individual change. Next slide. So we'll go through the first steps here. So step 1, become mindful of your biases. So you want to observe and examine your thoughts. Explore your attitudes towards human difference and observe your behavior. Step 2 is put your biases through triage. So just as patients, we put them through triage to process, to discover which, requires urgent treatment first, you need to do this with your biases as well. So you need to identify which ones are, more urgent and need your attention. Step 3 is identify the secondary gains of your biases. So identifying secondary gains of your biases involves recognizing the subconscious benefits or rewards that maintaining a particular bias provides. So secondary gains are often hidden advantages that a person might not be aware of, which reinforce and sustain their biased beliefs or behaviors. Next slide. Step 4 is dissect your biases. So where did you learn your biases? How many people actually have you met that conform to your bias that you're thinking of? Have you ever met people in your target group who do not conform to your bias? Step 5 is identify common kinship groups. So identifying common kinship groups helps uncover the social dynamics that underpin biases, so leading to greater self-awareness and more effective strategies for bias reduction. Step 6 is, bias is an attitude. So you need to shove your biases aside. Biases are often, a thought, and they're generally harmless unless they dictate behavior. So you need to think the thought and shove it aside. And then lastly, step 7 is fake it till you make it. So you need to use respectful language. The faking comes in on those occasions when you are not feeling particularly respectful. So speaking respectfully to and about people produces positive responses. Those responses will provide the kind of positive feedback that can help erode bias. And then last slide. So in conclusion, there are subtle yet impactful biases that can influence our perceptions and decisions. Recognizing the influence of unconscious bias is just the first step to truly creating an inclusive and equitable healthcare environment, and we must actively engage in dismantling these biases. So change begins with each one of us committing to continuous self-reflection, education, and fostering awareness. And as leaders in healthcare and humans, frankly, it's our duty not only cultivate our understanding of unconscious bias, but to champion its awareness as well. So that's it for this, short part of the presentation. But again, this workshop is, intended to be at least an hour and a half long, and there's lots of, engagement in it. So this and a facilitator guide will be put on the UKFPO website for anybody to facilitate it in the future if they're interested.
You're muted, Tony.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Joanna. Thanks very much. I think it's a very useful introduction there. I should just say at this point that we have 2 UKFPO fellows every year who are appointed, usually around sort of May time, and they spend some time delivering or working on projects and delivering projects for us. We've had Joanna and Aisha this year. Unfortunately, Aisha can't make it with us for the webinar this afternoon, but Joanna will be presenting some of her work later. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about shadowing and induction, and I'm going to just start off by reminding you that some time ago, HEE, as it was then, did conduct a review of the foundation programme, and there's some very useful information came out of that, feedback from a number of stakeholders, including a large number of foundation doctors. And they published a report on that, and then a little bit later published another report or another summary of some of the important aspects and taking it forward. The links are there, but I'm sure you can find the document, and the links will be on the website later. So one of the things that was covered in this was shadowing, shadowing leading to induction, and within this there's a list of useful factors that are helpful for doctors joining the trust, and then some induction into the department. So there's some general information, and then there's stuff more about the sort of clinical work and the emergency work. And I apologise, I have used the word trust. I'm aware that we are a four-nation organisation. Sometimes we have hospitals, and sometimes foundation doctors go into practices and other organisations. So just to sort of summarise the key things, it's really important that foundation doctors are shown where things are. It may seem very obvious. I think we often in big hospitals, we show them the ward, and we show them how to get to pathology, but we don't necessarily tell them where the canteen is or the mess or a number of other things that they may need to find. When we think about them meeting key people, we usually think, well, there's the clinical team, but there's also the educational team needs to introduce themselves, and there are administrators who are important, rota coordinators and that sort of thing. And I think it's important that we make people aware, or make new doctors aware of these. A lot of doctors, quite surprisingly, it is their first job, or certainly, and for many of them, it's certainly their first significant job. And it's important to talk about the roles and responsibilities, talking them through the pay slip, talking them how pay works, and so on. The importance of turning up. I had one doctor, when I asked him why he was being late, said he didn't really think it mattered. He'd been doing it for a few weeks and nobody had commented. So I think it is important that we make these things clear. We also need to talk about their responsibilities as a trainee, particularly labouring on the e-portfolio. And one of the useful guides that I've been given is you tell them about it and you send them an email about it, and you tell them to put the email somewhere safe. And then a little bit later, when they want to know about it, they can dig out those emails and look up some of the details. But it's important that they learn how the e-portfolio works, and that's particularly relevant to those who may not have used an e-portfolio before. A number of medical schools do use them now, but not all. Very important to know what to do out of hours, who to call out of hours. As I say, I think it's important that we are fairly explicit with what we expect. There is custom and practice. There are cultures in all the places that we work, things that are tolerated and things that are not. And people coming from outside, from different backgrounds, may not necessarily understand those, which are things that we take for granted. And I think the last thing is really important, that foundation doctors are an important part of the team. When they're not there, we miss them. When they go off to teaching, we sometimes struggle, or we sometimes are reluctant to let them go to teaching. So it's obvious that they are a very important part of the team, and we should welcome them as such. And I'd just like to briefly quote from a presentation that was given at the Medical Education Leaders and UK FPO Sharing Good Practice event earlier in the year, about how one particular hospital welcomes foundation doctors. And some of the things that I took home from that was a postgraduate centre help desk in the main hospital, probably in the foyer, for the first few days, so that foundation doctors can come and ask advice, ask directions in a sort of comfortable environment, or at least somebody they know that can help them. Another thing that this group talked about was asking foundation doctors what they wanted to get out of an induction, and then perhaps adding some extra bits towards the end. And of course, remembering Maslow. You know, I won't say everybody loves pizza, but you know, things like that are a very nice way to welcome people. You know, they may not know where the canteen is, the queue might be very long. There's all kinds of reasons, and if we just provide them with a little bit of support, they will feel more at home, more comfortable, and therefore be able to perform better. And at that same meeting, there was a lovely presentation from a group in Wales that had really gone out of their way to welcome the international medical graduates, not only to the hospital, but to the region in which they were working. And there's some similar projects I know going on in the north of England too. Another way of helping foundation doctors settle in is through mentorship and peer-to-peer support. This was something that was really asked for during the foundation review, and the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges, along with Health Education England, I think largely led by Mike Masding, who's the chair of one of the co-chairs of the UKFPO, was to produce a paper or a guide on how you run this near-peer support. There are a lot of anxieties around it, but in summary, it needs to be very clearly led by someone, probably the Foundation Training Programme Director or the DME. We would expect F2s or possibly even above to act as buddies. The term buddy was used because it was felt that perhaps they weren't really mentors. It should be voluntary on both sides, and there's some thought that matching doctors to certain personal characteristics is probably a good thing, because it might help to settle in and help them to overcome certain barriers. And again, I take the example of, you know, for example, international medical graduates, or I suppose possibly less than full-time doctors of this is how I managed. And I think it's worth just mentioning this year that during applications, we do have a number of doctors from certain backgrounds who drop out because they end up going to certain places, and I think that's very sad. So I think it's really important that we welcome foundation doctors and support them. Those who are mentoring or rather buddying are usually expected to complete the e-learning for health module on it. There should be a signed agreement between them, and both sides should be able to opt in and out as they choose, and possibly, if they find they need it again later, can opt back in again. And it's thought that, or the suggestion is that those who have supported the role, who have been buddies, should get some sort of recognition for it. And the final bit I just want to say on induction is we focus very hard on you know, the beginning in August when everybody settles in, but there are usually two other changeovers during the year, and it's really important that we find a way of ensuring that foundation doctors transfer from placement to placement effectively, and one really good way is for the foundation doctor to shadow the current doctor for a morning or an afternoon, or even just meet up at some stage, and actually if you have that facilitated, and this is one of the things that will come out a little bit later in terms of providing training opportunities. You know, if you timetable it, if you factor it in, it will happen. If you just let it happen, it may not. So that's my spiel really on induction, and I just wanted really to move on to supporting doctors in the workplace. You'll all be very familiar with this idea that the foundation program training is an experiential learning process with a little bit of classroom and other experiences added in to augment this. And the way it is run and assessed is that foundation trainees gather information to show, or evidence to show, that they've made progress against the foundation professional capabilities. So I'm going to hand over to Fiona now, who's going to talk about supporting the trainees during their placements.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next slide, please? It's stuck for me. I don't know if it's stuck for anybody else. Oh, here we go. Thank you. So it's important that we support our foundation doctors throughout their foundation years, but really at the start, you really want to set the scene, tell them exactly what's going to happen, explain to them about the regular meetings. The more meetings you have with your foundation doctor, the better. They often say, oh, I didn't realise I had a supervisor. I didn't realise I had a foundation programme director or a foundation school director, because they meet somebody, they get so engrossed in their work and the day-to-day running of the wards and the other jobs that they have to do. And sometimes they forget who people are. So really just keeping in touch, checking in regularly and making sure that the foundation doctor is okay, and explain exactly what's expected of them, and not just once. I would say that has to be repeated several times, and certainly as Tony has said, sending that email and then asking them to keep hold of it, because they will need to have regular checks, regular reminders of what they're meant to do. It's really important that you explain how they're going to be assessed, that actually they are going to be assessed, and that there is a summative assessment to their progress, and that 99% of foundation doctors excel, they do really well, and they settle into the team. But we want to make sure that as many of them as possible are got the right environment, the right conditions, in order for them to excel and to complete foundation in a smooth fashion. It's important that they know who their placement supervision group is, who's going to be looking after them, who's going to be assessing them, and who's going to be there for their feedback. So, telling them at the beginning who you're going to be talking to, who's there to look after them in their training environment. The supervisor's responsibility is not just about their educational work and their learning, but also is to give them that kind of mentorship, that career advice. Give them advice on tasters. Who in your organisation offers a taster in different posts? Now, most of us, we can't offer career advice. I'm an anaesthetist. I can't offer career advice in paediatrics or, say, surgery or medicine, but I know who to signpost people to. So part of our role is to actually make sure that, we can signpost people to the right people when they need that extra advice. We're there for their well-being and their support, and we can also provide advice on things such as lefts in full-time working, career breaks, anything that they need to support them. So the supervisor has a really important role in looking after these foundation doctors. So the earlier you meet with them, the earlier you set things out for them, then they feel supported, they feel they know who to come to, and where to find that information. I always think in foundation, there's always a curveball, there's always something that somebody asks you to go, gosh, I hadn't thought of that. But that's our role as foundation supervisors. It's really important that we don't just tell them about the basics of the ward. So most of our foundation doctors are based in ward environments, in secondary care and tertiary care, but it's important that we signpost them to other training opportunities, such as outpatient clinics. If there's theatre work, if there's endoscopy, procedures, lumps and bumps, whatever you're offering, can the foundation doctor attend? And what opportunities are there for community work? Perhaps you do a community clinic. Perhaps there's a multidisciplinary working with, let's say, care of the elderly. So not just ward work where they take the bloods and clerk in the patients, but actually make sure that they know what other opportunities there are. It's almost our opportunity to kind of almost sell our specialties as well. Say this is a good specialty. This is something you might be interested in doing in the future. So give them that whole rounded knowledge and of your training environment and what the training environments are going forward in their programme. Can I have the next slide, please? So as Tony has said, much of the work that they do is experiential. And by that we mean on the job working. They often don't think they're learning. They think this is just a job and they're doing their job and it's not really a learning environment. Sometimes they have to be signposted to say, actually, you have learned a lot. I often say to my F1s at the end of the F1 year, do you think you're a different person from the person who started when they were all kind of wide-eyed and terrified at the start of foundation? And they all say, it's amazing what I've learned. I didn't think I was learning, but actually I've learned a huge amount in that year. They often think, I don't know how I'm going to be like an F2 when they first start. And then they realise that that experiential learning, that training that we have provided with them, turns them into that F2 at the beginning of their F2 year. So much more polished doctor and ready for more senior work. So we do it through ward rounds. We get them to clerk in patients, admit patients, actually seeing patients, making assessments and making management plans is incredibly important learning for them, all with the support of senior clinicians, both giving feedback on their work and making sure that their work is correct. The discharge summaries are the bane of foundation doctors' lives. They're called different things in different hospitals. But the learning from that is enormous, and they have to be signposted that actually doing a discharge summary, that gives them a lot of involvement in the primary secondary care interface, is it handover. So actually it meets the curriculum requirements, and provided it's done well and done in time, you know, they've got time to do it, then they can learn a lot from doing those discharge summaries, which I know is the bane of their back. They don't like it, but actually there's an awful lot of learning. The other thing that's really important is that the learning that they have with their prescribing. Our foundation doctors really value feedback from the multidisciplinary team, whether that be their seniors or whether that be other members of the team, such as pharmacy, nursing, and other healthcare professionals. One of the things I would really suggest is that people should offer feedback. It should be contemporaneous, so at the end of a clinical intervention or at the end of a ward round, giving that doctor feedback and say, you did really well today, and the things you did well were this, and the things I'd like you to do more of is this, and the things I'd like you to do less of is this. So providing that contemporaneous feedback, because as you know, that if you leave it till a week or two later, they'll have forgotten what happened and you'll have forgotten what happened. So providing that feedback at the time and offer to do an SLE. I try to offer to do an SLE at the end of a ward round to say, is there anything we can do as an SLE here? And then I invite them. I don't expect them to think about sending an SLE to me. I invite it. I say, please send me an SLE and we'll get that signed off for you. So that's really important. The other role of the supervisor is really to make sure that they have that multidisciplinary, multi-professional learning. And as supervisors, we kind of need to know, where are the multidisciplinary team meetings? Do they exist? If they are, when do they happen? Do they happen on a Tuesday morning? Do they happen on a Friday afternoon? Are foundation doctors invited? Does your organisation organise Schwartz rounds? Some do, some don't. Some of them call them different things, where multi-professional people get together, discuss their feelings, discuss how things are going. In our organisation, we call it valued-based reflective practice. There are different names from it, but essentially you're coming together and discussing how things are going. And it's important that the foundation doctors are not excluded from these things. They might not be able to go every time, but try and get them to go to at least some of it so that they can experience this and that they are made to feel welcome. And that's the same for M&M meetings, morbidity or mortality meetings. We often exclude them, but please welcome them to those meetings. The learning from those is enormous. They can hear how things went well, they can hear how things went less well, and they can learn from people coming together, producing an action plan as to how things can be improved. And again, I've already put this in, but don't forget to remind them on you know, what else is going on, whether there's theatre work, whether there's procedures, even and some of them may be very interested, some might not be so interested, but at least signpost them so they have that opportunity to attend. Thank you very much. That is, I think I'm going to hand back over to Tony. Is it yourself again, or is it Aisha?
Yeah,
sorry, Duana. Sorry, Duana.
It's back to me, but just to provide a link really to Duana. Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, Fiona's very keen on the assessment part of the curriculum. As you know, she wrote the assessment section of the foundation curriculum. So we're going to talk a little bit about other experiences now. So it is a very experiential process, foundation training, but we do have some core teaching, and as Fiona said, it's really important to try and encourage foundation doctors to learn and participate in other aspects of training. So Duana's colleague Aisha worked along the process of trying to ensure that we offer these opportunities, and did some work on that. I say, unfortunately, she's not able to present it today, but I think Joanna's going to present that. And then both our fellows conducted a survey on core teaching, and it's really just to provide you a little bit of feedback on a national level, to some degree, about what foundation doctors find are good about teaching, and what areas they perhaps might like to be improved. We're aware that there are lots of differences across the 4 nations, and there's no one size fits all for everybody, but I think hopefully this will give you some food for thought, if nothing else. Joanna?
Thank you. So I will just be going over a few points from Aisha's project. So her project was basically to help get trainees, more accessible, more options while they're on the wards or in whatever placement that they're in. So for this first slide, introductory placement meetings will ideally involve discussions about training opportunities available in the department and how and when they are accessible. So opportunities should be scheduled in advance. So for example, clinic, theater, MDT meetings, procedure lists, etc., as this provides rota coordinators advance notice to cover these areas, and will also provide the foundations, the supervisors with more of an educational, or the doctors, sorry, with more of an educational opportunity, as they can prepare for the activity and know when they will actually be released from the ward for this. So a national survey that Aisha did was showed that current access to non-inpatient training opportunities are not satisfactory. So currently over 70% had no scheduled activities, and over 50% of F1s and F2s are not able to attend any activities ad hoc either. So in East Lancashire Trust, they actually have an excellent process in place where all foundation doctors are rotated to attend 4 clinics or theater sessions, procedures, lists, whatever it is for that specific specialty per rotation. And this has been the case for many years, and they've actually demonstrated it very well, and it shows that it is possible, and it changes the culture of how foundation doctors perceive their training and education. So on this slide here, this is an example and to demonstrate how this could be timetabled in. So this is like a sample work schedule. So this takes into account annual leave, SDT, if the trainee is in England, and 0 days, etc. And out of the total time available, 78% of the time is spent on the ward. So it's not that big of a difference if you are factoring in these different clinics or procedure lists or whatever it may be. And then for the last slide, even with 1 day of scheduled activity per month, we can see that the time on the ward actively does not reduce by much. And this mock rota can be used as an example of how to plan for these activities. So ideally, Aisha was hoping with this project that supervisors become more active when it comes to the trainees and providing more opportunities for them when they're on the wards, because it is possible and it doesn't take from too much time on the wards for the foundation doctor, and it obviously contributes to a big part of their learning as well. And that's it for Aisha's slides. So now for the core teaching survey. So Aisha and myself have been leading a WhatsApp forum with all of the other foundation reps, and we've had tons of discussions on what can be improved, what we're liking in our foundation trusts and in our hospitals. And a big topic that kept coming up was teaching. A lot of people had different experiences with teaching, so we did a quick survey for the reps and got a few data to understand what the teaching is like around the 4 nations. And we pulled that together to come up with some suggestions and ideas of possibly how to make core teaching better if possible. Next slide. So we got 48 responses from the reps, and this was from 36 trusts. The majority of people that responded were F2s, but it wasn't that big of a difference. And unfortunately, we didn't get responses from the reps in Wales, but after discussion with them and with everybody else, it seemed like everybody kind of had consensus kind of answers anyways. But we had responses from England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Next slide. So this is just an example of the frequency of core teaching. So it ranges according to trust and in different hospitals. So it can be weekly, fortnightly, monthly, or other. Next slide. So what was done well? So a few trainees were talking about Max Course Provision, which is an online technology that helps with hybrid and in-person learning, and they've said that that's been, very helpful for their hospitals. Slots in the morning make it a lot easier to attend training, so that was a bonus for some of the trainees. When the teaching has relevant topics that the trainees are interested in, that's obviously a plus. Hybrid formats improve accessibility. That was a big discussion. People ideally want hybrids training to be able to join the training as much as they can, even if they're on 0 days or if they're off or whatever it may be. Virtual options to catch up. So if they miss a training, there should be something online that they can catch up, whether it's a recording or some sort of e-learning. And then another thing that was mentioned was that in-person teaching is obviously great because it kind of increases, the rapport and the, conversations, and it's just a lot more social for the trainees. So a lot of people do really enjoy going to teaching and kind of getting that time off of the ward and connecting with their peers. Next slide. So what could be improved? So we were discussing, more clinical topics versus governance. Now, we know that governance is obviously extremely important for trainees to understand, but it seems like sometimes there's a little bit of a imbalance between the two. So obviously just making sure that there's enough clinical topics mixed in with governance as well. Multiple sessions have been canceled and not rearranged. So this is obviously varies from hospital to hospital, but ideally we're looking for these canceled ones to be rearranged if possible. Options for catch-up and hybrid attendance. If there's a way that we can put both in for all of the hospitals in the trust, that would be ideal. Bleep-free teaching is a big one, and we'll talk about that on our next slide as well. Rotas being flexible to swap 0 days. This was discussed in the last FSD meeting, and it is very difficult to obviously change rotas and change 0 days, but there is a big rota aspect to this, so that could obviously be something that we maybe discuss before rotas are put out. And having to ask for study leave for core teaching. This was only done, I believe, in one trust or in one hospital, and we've discussed that as well. So the majority of people don't actually do this. And lastly, irrelevant or basic content. So we're just looking for things that are more engaging and things that we can actually use as trainees, and just a little bit more creativity with the topics. Next slide.
I think, Diana, you were just going to finish off by talking a little bit about bleep-free teaching.
Yes. Okay. So the big thing that was highlighted is bleep-free teaching. This is something that I think, supervisors and foundation trainees can work together to implement for each of the, hospitals and the wards. Every ward is going to be different. Foundation year 1 doctors are lucky in the sense that when they go for teaching, they could pass off their bleeps to the F2s because the teachings usually aren't rostered on the same days. But foundation year 2 doctors usually struggle with giving the bleep up because they can't give it to F1s, and then sometimes they're the only F2 or the only F2 level person in the ward. So I think if supervisors can help with this as well, and foundation trainees to work together to make sure that every ward has a set kind of rules list or kind of a set list of who they can pass the bleep to, or make sure that there's some sort of practice put in place so that these doctors can attend their teachings. The foundation trainees are going to advocate for this and just make sure that everybody that's coming in to foundation training knows that teaching should be bleep free and that there should be somebody to pass the bleep to. But if they aren't aware, maybe this can be discussed in the introductory meetings with supervisors. And if there's a way that you can advocate for that as well, that would be great.
Thanks very much, Diana. I know that Tamika's been monitoring questions and things while we've been going along. I don't know if there's anything that we need to answer. Is there, Tamika?
There's just one. Someone's asked if they can have a summary of the learning outcomes for the talks.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can make the presentations available on the website, can't we? And the entire webinar will be published on the website in a week or two once it's been prepared. So, oh, some positive feedback there. Is there anything else coming in? Oh, Fiona, there's a question about summary narrative. Do you want to just talk us through that one?
Yeah, I can't see the questions. What was the question?
Oh, sorry,
about the summary narrative?
It's just basically advice on how you write a summary narrative.
Okay, so the summary narrative is there to allow you to critically appraise what you've done in the year. So essentially what you do is you look at the higher learning outcomes and think, have I met these higher learning outcomes, and why have I met these higher learning outcomes? So you might say something like, I think I have met HLO1, which is the caring, compassionate and competent doctor. I have 10 SLEs demonstrating my clinical competence. I have had excellent feedback. I have a full range, both physical, mental and social health. And I have achieved the deteriorating patient evidence by attending an ILS course. And then for maybe to HLO2, you might say something along the lines of, you know, I've met this competence because I have excellent TAB feedback. My PSG shows that I have, you know, good clinical skills, good prescribing skills, and I follow guidelines, and I have taken care of myself this year and recognised when I've not felt well. Things like that. Very short. It can be bullet points. It can be prose. You can choose what you want to do. It's really just a way of looking at what you've done in the year and deciding whether you've met the competence or not. It's actually quite a useful thing to do towards the end of the year, to be proud of what you've done in the year, to realise how much you've come on and what you maybe want to do next year. Just a taking stock exercise. The actual content of it and the quality of what you've written isn't actually formally assessed, but whether you've done it or not is assessed. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Fiona. There's also a question about somebody taking over as clinical supervisor for an F2. I think within the curriculum there are, if you look on the UKFPO website on the curriculum page, there is some information on what is expected of clinical supervisors when supporting foundation doctors. There's obviously the things we've covered in this presentation, and there's I think if you look on the GMC website, there's some advice on what is required of both clinical and educational supervisors, the areas of CPD which are required in terms of ensuring the learning environment is safe for both patients and doctors, and that the doctors are supported in their learning, given the appropriate learning opportunities and so on. If you also on the curriculum page, there is actually a short guide for clinical supervisors, so it's well worth having a look on the UKFPO website, which for those of you who haven't been for a while has been updated and I think is more easily navigable. So I would really ask you, if you have questions, to just have a look on the website, and many of them I'm sure will be answered. The other thing is training like this, and I'm sure FTPDs will have regular training sessions in the base trust or hospital. There is a comment on teaching, whether it's relevant or irrelevant. Yeah, I guess that depends a little bit on the view of the person and their previous experience. I don't know if you want to answer that one, Duana. It was.
Yeah, I can comment on that. Not necessarily that some of the teachings are completely irrelevant, because obviously any topic in governance and clinical is going to have some sort of relevance, but maybe relevant in time and organization. Like, for example, in my hospital, when we were in F1, I think close to the end of the year, we had a really good presentation from a GP about discharge letters, and they explained to us the importance of discharge letters and how to write effective ones and what they're looking for as GPs. And at this point, a lot of people were thinking, I've been doing discharge letters so wrong. Why was this close to the end of the year? I wish this was at the beginning of the year. So maybe just kind of relevancy of organization of teaching and making sure that it's relevant to maybe the time of year. Like, for example, there's a lot of winter pressures and bronchiolitis, for example, for peds. So if that can be done before winter, that would help with people seeing the presentations during winter. So maybe just kind of organization of these teachings and when they can happen, if possible.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, there's a question about teaching. I'm conscious we're coming to the end of our time, so we'll just pick up a couple of things as we go. Doing teaching for F1s. Yeah, I mean, I think this is partly what makes teaching relevant, really, in terms of the foundation doctors are there to achieve their high level outcomes, the HLOs, which are broken down into the foundation professional capabilities, the FPCs, and teaching should really be planned around that. And so I think if you're planning a teaching session, you should be thinking which outcomes in the curriculum is this I suppose is this relevant for, and if it's some very esoteric part of your subspecialty, then maybe that's not quite the right thing to present. But there might be some relevance in how you undertake that, or it might be relevant to the careers part of it. I'm just having a flip through the last couple of questions. I think we are going to have to finish in a moment or two, aren't we, James? Qualify the excellent. Yes, I think it is a valid question. This is from Dan about why don't we grade doctors as excellent, capable, or below standard. We've been through this argument numerous times, and the bar is, or the purpose of the program is to cross the bar and make sure you are a safe doctor. We don't have a grade for excellent doctors. We shouldn't have a two-tier system, but on the educational supervising, clinical supervisor end of year reports or end of placement reports, there's ample opportunity to write down what this doctor does well, and I think it's really important that you give the positive feedback as well as the areas for improvement. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm not sure we can particularly answer. There's a question about logging hours. It is important that foundation doctors log their hours, and that we look at them reaching. And I think in every placement, it's important the clinical supervisor just reviews the learning log, so that they can ensure that the doctor is up to date at each placement. You have a mid-placement review, so 2 months in, there's an opportunity to flag up if foundation doctors are behind with anything, and give them a prompt or some support to move on. We are coming to the end of our time, I'm afraid, where there are some questions in the there are, in the Q&A section, but I think we are going to have to finish it there because of time. I would like to say thank you very much to Fiona Cameron, Chair of the Academy of Medical Royal College's Foundation Programme Committee, for helping me out on this one, and especially thank Doanna and, in her absence, Aisha, who have been excellent fellows this year, and I really hope the process of having really excellent foundation doctors working as part of the UKFPO team to help develop us is something that we can continue with going forward. And thanks to James and Tamika, who've been working in the background. Thank you all very much. There will be another webinar coming up soon. Details will be published soon, and we hope to be running monthly webinars. I hope you've all found this useful. Please take care and enjoy the rest of your afternoons.